All right, so we're going to be talking about the Great Society, and this was something that Lyndon B. Johnson came up with when he became president during 1963. So if you looked at Mondays, you watched the BuzzFeed Unsolved going over the different um, conspiracy theories about JFK and whether or not he was actually assassinated. Well, we know he was assassinated, but whether or not it was the plot of one man or if it was a bigger plot, whether it be the government, the mafia, the Soviets, whoever it may be. But either way, when Kennedy dies, Johnson is eventually going to become president of the United States. So usually when I talk about the Great Society, I like to start off with this question of what does it take to make a great society? I would have you guys write down your responses and we would talk about them as a class. But I do want to show you this clip from a show called The Newsroom, and this was a show that aired on HBO a few years ago. And initially, when this was released, this was the first opening 5 minutes of the show. I think it was pretty controversial because it really talks about whether or not America is the greatest country in the world. I will warn you, the clip does have a couple of F-bombs that get dropped, so if it's an issue for you, please go ahead and skip over.
Go ahead. Hi, my name is Jenny. I'm a sophomore, and this is for all three of you. Can you say in one sentence or less what... you know what I mean. Can you say why America is the greatest country in the world?
Diversity and opportunity.
Lewis?
Freedom and freedom. So let's keep it that way.
Will?
The New York Jets.
No, I'm going to hold you to an answer on that. What makes America the greatest country in the world?
Well, Lewis and Sharon said it. Diversity and opportunity and freedom and freedom.
I'm not letting you go back to the airport without answering the question.
Well, our Constitution is a masterpiece. James Madison was a genius. The Declaration of Independence is, for me, the single greatest piece of American writing. You don't look satisfied.
One's a set of laws and the other's a declaration of war. I want a human moment from you. What about the people? Why is America
Not the greatest country in the world, Professor. That's my answer.
You're saying...
Yes.
Let's talk about...
Fine. Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of her paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime and column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always?
Hey.
And with a straight face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom.
All right.
And yeah, you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite? Sure used to be. We stood up for what was right. We fought for moral reasons. We passed laws, struck down laws for moral reasons. We waged wars on poverty, not poor people. We sacrificed. We cared about our neighbors. We put our money where our mouths were, and we never beat our chest. We built great big things, made ungodly, technological advances, explored the universe, cured diseases, and we cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy. We reached for the stars, acted like men. We aspired to intelligence. We didn't belittle it. It didn't make us feel inferior. We didn't identify ourselves by who we voted for in the last election, and we didn't scare so easy. We were able to be all these things and do all these things because we were informed by great men, men who were revered. First step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. America is not the greatest country in the world anymore. Enough?
So when that came out, it caused quite a bit of a stir, and you got a little bit of a debate about whether or not America is the greatest country in the world, and that statement is certainly subjective. But it's definitely been used, I would say, in the last 10 to 15 years. Obviously, with Trump running in 2016, his campaign slogan was "Make America Great Again," kind of jumping on this idea that America was no longer the greatest country in the world. But something in that clip that I do like and agree with is that American citizens aren't really informed anymore. A lot of the time we make decisions, without doing our research or understand what it is we are and are not voting for. And the news media, I don't think, does a very good job of informing us either. It's very black and white. Either you're this or you're that, and there's no real gray area, and we know that there definitely is. But definitely kind of an interesting clip to kind of get you thinking about, what does it take to make a great society, and is America a great society, or are we falling, or are things getting better? Just something to sort of think about. So LBJ's goals. His goal was really to extend the policies of JFK. Now, Lyndon Johnson had actually ran against John F. Kennedy in 1960 for the Democratic nomination for president, and he's going to end up losing. And Lyndon B. Johnson's going to be pretty bitter about it. He had really wanted to be president, and Kennedy had actually surprised quite a bit of people when he decided to select LBJ as his vice presidential candidate. One of the reasons that he chose Johnson is Johnson's what we call a Southern Democrat, so he would be sort of like a blue state or a blue guy. When you hear, the term conservative, you tend to think red, because red represents the Republican Party, and the South tends to be very conservative. Well, Lyndon B. Johnson was from Texas, and he was a Democrat, and it was during the 1960s that you actually see Texas vote as a blue state, as a Democratic state, and which is kind of weird to think about, because when you think about Texas, you always think very conservative, they're very Second Amendment, and during the 1960s, Johnson's really going to have a hold over Texas. And a lot of people believe that's one of the reasons that Kennedy picked LBJ, was because he was able to pull some southern states to help vote for Kennedy in that 1960 election. Johnson also had a lot of bit of power. He was the minority Senate leader, basically what Chuck Schumer is today, and he was known as a guy who got things done. But he and Kennedy, they really didn't get along. And in 1963, especially about the time of Kennedy's assassination, there were rumors that LBJ was not going to be the vice presidential nominee along with Kennedy the following year. And that's why you get a lot of conspiracy theories about whether or not LBJ had Kennedy assassinated. What you choose to believe is totally up to you, but once Kennedy is assassinated, LBJ is going to be sworn in. When Kennedy took office, he had this plan, what he called the New Frontier. So, with FDR, he had the New Deal, Truman had what he called the Square Deal, and Kennedy had what he called the New Frontier. And really his goal in the 1960s was kind of to propel America forward. He wanted to keep the good economy going. He wanted to start a space program. He was looking to start civil rights legislation to try to end those Jim Crow laws. Because as you saw probably in the Happy Days video that you watched last week, segregation and the civil rights movement was really starting to kick off in the 1950s. So when LBJ comes into office, he's going to kind of go ahead and continue on with some of the same goals as Kennedy. So a little bit about Johnson, which you already kind of mentioned. He was born in Texas, and his presidential library is there in Austin, the capital. He was raised in poverty, so his dad wasn't somebody who had a whole lot of money, so they definitely struggled as they were growing up. He also taught in a low-income school, so his first career was actually as a teacher, but he only did that for a few years, realized that wasn't for him, and during the Great Depression era, decided that politics was really going to be the way for him to go. When Johnson, well, let me kind of backtrack a little bit. To know about Johnson, Johnson was a very straightforward guy. He was no BS, very much to the point. And he was known as a guy who really sort of got things done. He was a bit of a prankster. So back in like the 60s and 50s and stuff, there were cars called amphicars, or basically kind of like duck boats. So they were cars that would drive on land, and then when you hit the water, they would turn into boats. And so he was known to take people, whether it was the Secret Service or people in his cabinet, around in this car, and he would literally go barreling down the hill towards the river, full speed ahead, and then would claim to his passengers that the brakes wouldn't work and that he couldn't get the car to stop. So people thought that they were going to like hit the river and die. And then the second they would hit the water, the car would suddenly turn into a boat, and he would start busting up laughing. So he was a real character. He definitely had a rough image, and he was a Texas guy, so he was known as being tough. But like I said, he didn't take anyone's BS, and he was somebody that definitely got things done. When Johnson had become president, he had 26 years of congressional experience, so he had been in politics quite a bit of time. And Johnson was somebody who wanted to be president pretty much his entire life. And again, it's why you get a lot of conspiracy theories about whether or not he actually had JFK assassinated, because he was quite bitter when he lost that 1960 presidential election. And because Johnson knew that he always wanted to be president, he was very much what we would call a yes man. So he did favors for anybody. Didn't matter if you were a Democrat like him or a Republican. Basically, he wanted to get as many favors as he could, so that way when he took office, he was going to be able to get things done. And so that's exactly what he did, is that he would bargain, he would threaten people, or he'd be like, hey, remember when I passed this bill for you? You're now going to get this bill passed for me. And Johnson, domestically, in terms of laws that are created for America and at home, probably got more done than any other president in American history. Oftentimes, though, that really gets forgotten. I think a lot of people remember LBJ really for the Vietnam War. It was a war that reached its peak during his presidency. He certainly didn't start the Vietnam War. It was something that was inherited. So by the time he took over the Vietnam War, America was really already about 7 years in, so it wasn't something that he started. But a lot of the anti-Vietnam War protests and things that you see really come underneath his presidency. So not your parents, but if you ask your grandparents what they think about LBJ, most of them are likely going to remember him for Vietnam. I think a lot of people tend to forget what it was that he did domestically, and it was quite a bit. So America in the early 1960s, the economy that had really started in the 1950s was continuing on, especially in the early 1960s. So under Eisenhower, you had the national freeway system that was being built. So roads and suburbs were also being built as well. We look at the 1950s as being this era of conformity. So that way, that's how suburbs really come to be. It's those cookie cutter homes. It's those tracts in which there's really only 4 different styles of homes, and they all kind of look similar. Cars also become quite huge in the 50s and 60s. Shopping malls are also going to be huge because televisions have pretty much been in the majority of Americans' homes by the 50s and the 60s. Advertising is going to become quite huge. The show Mad Men that I recommended that you guys watch, at least that first episode, it's about guys working in the advertising industry. And if you watch that first episode, it's really about Don Draper, the lead character, trying to convince Americans to continue smoking cigarettes, even though they know it's going to give you cancer and likely kill you. But that was really the whole point of advertising. It's convincing you to buy things. We know when the Super Bowl rolls around every year, everyone's looking forward to the ads. And really that becomes a tradition because of televisions in the home. And because, again, we are a service sector society. We buy and sell goods and services, and that's how our economy gets rolling. And then fashion, of course, is also going to become huge in the 1960s. And I kind of had you guys do that with your 1950s Facebook page of what kind of style do you like, what kind of music do you listen to, because definitely the music that you listen to sometimes reflects the style that you wear as well. So what exactly was the reality of the 60s? So yes, you had a middle class that was strong, you had an economy that was doing well, you definitely had people that were working, but there was also extreme poverty. So you had about 50 million people that were starving, that were homeless, that were not educated, that lived in city slums. They lived in very what we call rural areas. So it's an area where maybe like your next neighbor isn't till 10 miles away. in the deep South, especially, there's a lot of rural areas. And then, of course, you had Indian reservations as well. And because Johnson had grown up in Texas and because he grew up poor, he really wanted to start what he called the war on poverty. So in that newsroom clip, you see him say, we need to start wars on poverty, not necessarily people. That war on poverty that he's referring to has to do with Johnson. So Johnson's going to, when he becomes president, he's going to do what he calls the Great Society. And Johnson's vision of a more perfect and equitable society was really going to sort of be his goal for Americans. And he wanted to help those that he felt were impoverished and disadvantaged in America. So right when LBJ takes office, one of the first things that he gets passed is the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which basically said you could not discriminate on the basis of race, religion, sex, gender, whatever it may be, when either kids are going to school or they're applying for a job. It was a huge piece of legislation. A lot of people look at it as the big sort of cornerstone, very symbolic of the civil rights movement and what Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. had done to try to create change. Because when Johnson took office, segregation laws, those Jim Crow laws, definitely still existed, not just throughout the South, but throughout the United States as a whole. Johnson's also going to create Medicare during his presidency. So Medicare provides health insurance for anyone who is low income and also anyone over the age of 65. So if any of your grandparents are 65 or older, their insurance is likely Medicare. And you're going to hear Medicare quite a bit, especially this year, again, because it is an election year. Healthcare has been debated. A lot more so the past 10 to 15 years. You have Obama, who passed Obamacare, what is more commonly known as the Affordable Care Act. Some people were happy with it, some people weren't. You have the Trump administration, who's currently trying to repeal all of it. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. But you've heard Bernie Sanders tout it. You might hear it from Joe Biden as well, this idea of Medicare for all, meaning that the government would supply Medicare for all people. Is that going to happen? Probably not. But you will hear about Medicare for all, or having a system kind of like Medicare in which people who need health insurance are essentially able to get it. Johnson's also going to kind of expand some education, so he's going to start scholarships, try to help people who are, come from very poor backgrounds go to college. He's going to introduce clean air and clean water legislation. Like I said, he does quite a bit domestically, but a majority of what he does gets overshadowed because of Vietnam. Something else that Johnson sort of passed, because he was starting that war on poverty and wanted to help what he called, the neediest people in American society. He'll expand kind of welfare programs like food stamps, making them sort of permanent aspects of American society.